Welcome everybody to the next episode of KapVista Klips. Today we have Chris Boyce here from Umano, and you all know Leila. We want to have a chat about the wonderful world of developer tools and what that looks like. Hi guys, how are you?
Hey Dan, hey Leila, very good, thank you. How are you guys?
Good to have you here, Chris.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So let's sort of get an understanding. What's your story? Tell us, the lead up, how you got to this point.
I have probably the least linear path to Umano imaginable, which I think is part of why I'm so passionate about Umano, because it brings all of those past experiences together. So I've come from the consulting world. I was with Accenture in their strategy consulting, where we were helping companies build great product and look at opportunities for growth. And typically that was in the region of Asia Pacific, and really learnt the fundamentals of what drove business success, and also in that context, team success. Loved that experience, got totally burnt out, decided to shift gears, and then went into venture philanthropy, social impact. And so that was a relatively new company in Australia, taking the principles of VC, but the capital was philanthropic from high net worth individuals and family trusts. And with that capital, we would select and identify really outstanding social entrepreneurs that were creating generational changing platforms, breaking cycles of disadvantage within these communities. And so we would find these entrepreneurs, and we would bring the principles of capital plus networks plus strategy to help codify these models that were creating success and scale them. And my experience there was to really understand, again, the fundamentals of what drove really successful leadership and teams in growing, rather than in the commercial context, in the not-for-profit context, and how communities really play a major role in creating impact and substantial change. I led the portfolio of companies that we were backing, and helped scale that business to the point where it was a natural segue for me to want to go back into a commercial role. I'd not yet run a P&L, and that was something professionally that I wanted to do in building a team and a product of valued by its customers. So I joined Dun & Bradstreet, which is a data-driven digital enterprise. It's a global data play. Mm-hmm. And I joined as a new role in the region of head of product, where I was responsible for research and development, for the creation of new products, consolidating different data sets, and also looking at new ways of shipping value on to our customers to help them make better decisions with data. And it was there in that role that I was very clear on what we had to achieve with respect to a financial target. And we'd just come under new ownership. And so there was very, very clear direction under that new ownership of what we had to achieve. But I was less clear on how to do that. And so being new to really building technical products and partnering with IT to help me execute on this product roadmap, I really struggled on the how to do this most effectively and with most impact. And there were things that were holding us back as a company. One was, ironically, the agile way of working, which is meant to accelerate and facilitate change. There was huge complexity in that. We were cross geography, we were cross company. We had a lot of consultants augmenting our product teams to help them run faster. And obviously cross discipline. And so in this way of working, really creating a clear alignment was something that was lacking, and we struggled with. The other thing was feedback loops. We struggled with getting real-time information to help on the run decision making, to be far more effective in the way that we were executing. And the third thing that was holding us back was we were just tracking the wrong things. We were tracking outputs And my hunch was if we could get better insight into behaviors, into the inputs that led to success, that led to great outcomes of customers loving our products, everyone would be better off. And this is really where the concept of Umano started. So how could I, as a leader of a digital product capability in an enterprise, get better views and observability into the behaviors that drove team success? And most importantly, how could I equip my teams with that information so that they could do it themselves, so that they had their automated feedback loops, so that they could be making their decisions and be taking accountability in that context of a learning culture to be far more impactful and delivering on time, on budget, and delighting our customers along the way. So that's kind of the very loose, non-linear path that led me to the creation of Umano. And the natural stepping stone was really when our owners of the local operations of Dun & Bradstreet sold back to private equity, and I just thought, I've got to give this a crack. This is now an opportunity to try this theory and to see if it's working.
And it has been working.
It has been working, yeah. So we built some proof of concepts and started very early on with, we probably bit off more than we could chew with the likes of Macquarie Bank, KPMG, and a couple of other organizations, where we brought a prototype to them to say, if we created visibility and observability for teams, could we prove the theory that they could be more efficient, that they could be more effective? And we did. We proved that with we had a cohort of probably about 600 engineers, probably about 60 teams, that on average teams could improve their efficiency and effectiveness by about 30%, which was awesome, because a lot of the reason that these companies were interested in Umano was trying to build and invest in developer success, creating these cultures of high performance and empowered teams that they could do it themselves. And off the back of that success, that's really when we decided to shift gears. We decided to move out of enterprise and the complexities of on-premise deployments and big software deployments and shift into cloud. And that's what we did. So last year we got busy building the cloud version, and that's what we released this year, so that really any team anywhere in the world could sign up. And there were no barriers to access those insights and build that really the democratic sense, if you like, of access to data, so that any team could improve themselves. And that's where we're at.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Chris, you told us about the problem. So I understand the market, I understand what you're solving, but what is the solution? What is Umano doing?
Most simply, Leila, we're creating an automated feedback loop. It's the feedback loop that creates evolution. It's the feedback loop that creates growth. And without those signals, we just run at status quo. And so by automating that feedback loop, by using the data sets generated by teams in their day-to-day work, we're not necessarily creating anything new or special. We plug into the way that they work, into the tools that they already trust and use. We extract that information on a daily basis across a range of different metrics and AI and ML generated models that we have, to then present back to that team how they're working. And again, it's the how they're working, not the what they're working on, so to speak. It's the how that's unique about Umano. And so at the moment, we've started by supporting teams on the Atlassian developer toolset and ecosystem. And now we're starting to expand that addressable market, if you like, by plugging in Umano to GitHub, to GitLab, and to Microsoft Azure. So clearly, that's also an enormous market that we want to serve. And we're getting a lot of prospect customers signing up saying, that's great, you're on Atlassian, but we're on these tool sets, or we run a hybrid tool set. And so that's the next step of really expanding who we serve. So automated feedback loop, plugging into the tools that they use, ingest that, run that through Analyzer, and present it back to them on a dashboard across their design and build workflow, their review flow, and then the engagement flow. Team engagement patterns, again, is another really core differentiator for Umano. Insights into how a team communicates, how balanced their communication patterns are to encourage diversity of opinion. What's the response times? Are there blockers? What's the collaboration patterns that are occurring? Are teams working in a hidden way in terms of sort of, whilst we have our formal teams over here delivering particular capabilities, are they actually sort of sidling off and working on stuff that's not planned and therefore creating problems around overload culture? All these sorts of interactions that are really necessary to create observability around.
Okay. So you've told us about Umano. Tell us about the team. How did it come together? Who's behind it? And give us an idea on the strength of the background in their experience.
Yeah, you bet. So we're a super lean team, and very proud of what we as literally 3 people have been able to achieve in the last 18 months. So I have obviously myself leading product, leading customer engagement and growth. I have a phenomenally smart data scientist, Leila and Dan. She's a PhD in machine learning models around pattern recognition. So naturally, that's a huge skill set in being able to take the immense quantity of data that we have and build models that can generate the insights that are actionable for teams to grow. So she's a phenomenal asset to the team. And then the third pillar, if you like, is clearly engineering. And so Dave, who is our lead on the engineering stack, is just a super competent engineer that just gets on with the job of building an immensely ambitious roadmap and just a solid pair of hands in terms of creating that stack. What I love about Dave is his curiosity. And like, as just a quick anecdote, being a kid, he grew up in Colombia. He, at the age of 10, effectively rewired the electricity system in his family's house. So that gives you an example of the curiosity and the intellect that is running in this quiet engine in the background. Before the team of 3, we had to contract. Like any good startup, we kind of go through the swings and roundabouts. And so they were the team that stayed with us when I decided to contract. And we contracted when we made that shift, coming out of enterprise and moving into cloud. It was when COVID hit. We clearly were walking away from our major sources of revenue, and we weren't in a position to be able to raise. And I wanted a solid, dependable team to show that we could execute and set out and do what we planned to do. Prior to that, though, the team was really, again, a really high pedigree and quality, and that's the team that built the foundations of the platform. Those people came from Atlassian, from AWS. They were responsible for building, for example, Jira Cloud. So really putting us in strong foundations. And whilst I have a team of 3, I have a huge powerhouse, if you like, in advisors. We clearly wouldn't be here without the advisors that we have. And similarly, from an investment perspective, from a business growth perspective, dev tools, and similarly cloud, B2B. And so I'm tapping into that group of advisors pretty much every week, depending on what problems I'm trying to solve in building Umano.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned a couple of the clients that you're working with. What does your momentum look like? Who are the clients? Tell us about the industry and the partners, and what's coming up next.
Sure
Chris,
thing.
I want to highlight as well that you are one of the only companies in a seed round that have this traction. So you have, last time we spoke, you had 43 active teams, 23 new accounts, and 8 source countries.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? Especially with no marketing budget. I'm loving that.
Three people.
Yeah, 3 people. That's right. So the traction, guys, it's still organic, obviously, with such a small team. And the purpose of the raise is really to ramp up in our digital marketing, to really build that funnel. But what we're seeing is typically, without any effort, at least 3 to 5 new accounts created a week. And they can be, for example, we had a company called Sales Boomerang from New York City sign up last night. They've got 5 teams. In my dev team language, that includes like it's quite a big team in terms of the data sets that they've plugged in that support them. And they would be typical of one customer segment. And so that customer segment that we're seeing typically sign up is a native SaaS platform. They're scale ups, they're fast growing, and they're looking to build new playbooks in the way that they work to grow, and using Umano's guardrails, metrics, to create some commonality and consistency in the way those teams rapidly build new product and platform and bring on new team members. So that's one segment. A second segment, really interestingly, and I hadn't planned this to be so strong, is software dev consultancies, who are looking to get stronger alignment with their customers and in creating that real-time visibility between the two and those client engagements, and create more accountability for their clients, in fact, to be able to see what's going on both ways, for them to keep the client accountable, doing what they say they would, and for the client to keep the consultancy accountable. And this is a really new dynamic. It's a really modern way of working in creating that real-time transparency. And for us, what's really keen about this segment is we're now seeing these consultancies introduce us to their clients. So that's a huge growth path for us in building a potential affiliate partner model. And so we're starting to scope what that might look like. We've got interestingly, out of Colombia, South America, we've got 3 consultancies signed up, and we're exploring with them as a cohort what a reseller model might look like into their US-based clients. KPMG is another that's continued on and working with us in that segment. The third segment that we've seen sign up is really those larger enterprises looking or midway through or engaging in digital transformation. So they're non-traditional tech businesses that are desperately, as a result of COVID, looking to digitize their products and services rapidly. And in doing so, they've got to upskill their teams. And to upskill their teams, what better way than creating observability around those practices and giving those teams the ability to be making decisions on what they can do to improve themselves in the context of working in an agile way. So creating far more flexibility and far more agility by those real-time insights. So they're the kind of 3 segments that are signing up: the consultants, the high growth native tech startups, and those sort of later stage non-digital or non-tech that are going through a digital transformation phase. We deployed, as you guys know, into the Atlassian marketplace about a month ago, and that's been awesome. So we're starting to get really great traction from them, and a lot of leads are coming from that marketplace. And we're now looking at some really interesting marketing opportunities with high profile apps in the marketplace that see the opportunity for Umano to provide. And also we're exploring the ability to integrate products. So integrate Umano, for example, with some of these larger scale apps that already have huge traction, so that their customers can access our insights in their platforms. So another huge growth opportunity for us.
Okay.
So is this already in place, or are you still developing it?
We're scoping that now. So one partner in particular, we're building the integrations.
Wow, that's great. And Chris, talking about the industry, how do you think the industry was 5 years ago how is this changing, and what do you think is going to be in 5 years?
I think so the broader industry of developer tools is massively saturated, right? Like there's so many tools that are being created to help make the lives of developers and product teams easier. Having said that, one of the segments in dev tools is this notion of what's loosely classified as engineering intelligence. And so engineering intelligence is about creating insights through metrics and presenting those insights back as charts. To me, that's kind of a pretty old school way of working, and that would be highly representative of sort of like the way we worked 5 years ago. In this context of what does a modern engineering team look like, and how is the sector changing, I think COVID has a massive influence. So this huge shift, not just for engineering teams, but for companies globally now in a hybrid way of working. The reality is teams are distributed, and the ability to get aligned and get across in a distributed way what everyone's working on and communicating therefore online rather than, the coffee or the kitchen water cooler chat that's just not taking place anymore. So the online communications is huge, and the ability to create increased observability around that is going to be massive. And so the trends around distributed ways of working, where 60% of employees and team members want to stay in this hybrid reality. KPMG estimates, again, customers will generate around 80% of their revenue from the creation of new digital products and services because of COVID. So the investment in these teams creating these products and services is just going to be exponential. So the industry is going to change rapidly. The tools to support those teams to do that are going to be critical, and tools that simplify hybrid ways of working, that simplify collaboration, that simplify efficiency and effectiveness of teams working in this new complex way of working are just going to be critical for success.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So, what are the usual pain points that are addressed by your customers and clients? I understand that the efficiencies and things like that, but how do you get into these large companies now? There's the Atlassian model where they started from the ground up, and they were getting into dev teams, and then before you know it, the entire company was using it instead of them going top down. How are you addressing your pain points, and how are you getting into these sort of companies?
So it's a great question. I think it's still early days with respect to where the product is at and the traction, but the trends, the early signals that we're seeing that are starting to be a little bit repeatable. We're seeing sort of 5 customer segments with some unique kind of problems that each of those is trying to solve. So we're still seeing sort of that leadership role, like a VP of engineering or a CTO. And they are wanting Umano to help create stronger practices. So I referred to that scale up example earlier, where they're rapidly hiring. They're trying to get a consistent way of working between new hires. They're trying to get a transfer of knowledge and culture from the existing team members to the new team members. And so to create a common playing field where kind of everybody knows the guardrails and the playbooks that Umano can elevate and can highlight is solving a key problem for them. The other part of that problem that we're solving for them is really the notion of building stronger middle management, if you like, in an engineering organization. So empowering their tech leaders to take more accountability and more ownership of the way they're growing their teams is a huge part of the investment that they need to make to grow a strong engineering organization. And so equipping their middle layer with a learning loop helps that middle layer make more effective decisions. So that's a kind of core problem that we're seeing that first role of a VP of engineering or CTO sign up.
Yeah.
Another role that we're seeing sign up is a Scrum Master or an Agile coach. And this is really around supporting the Scrum or Agile ways of working. It's about helping teams define the practices that work best for them. So, for example, we've had one company's Scrum Master or Chief Scrum Master sign up, and he's done a baseline across all the teams. And to really personalize Scrum for that company and for what works best for that team. And using Umano, he could see that some teams were far more effective in working in a sprint with like a weekly cadence, whereas other teams were far more effective in working in a Kanban cadence over like a fortnight, where it's just far looser but continuous in the way that they would evolve and move through their work. And so he then empowered his teams to be able to, with that data, to set up their best way of working that serves them the most, to be most productive and most effective in the way they shipped. So that's a second sort of user segment that's we're seeing consistently sign up and apply Umano to the problems that they uniquely have. Thirdly, I should say, product managers. So we're seeing heads of product or VP of product or kind of product leads, because they, in my experience, and it's as I referred to earlier, are working in coherent, in like lockstep and in total partnership with tech. So they are the ones typically setting the what, whereas engineering is setting the how. In setting the what, they need to speak the same language and they need to be on the same page. And so there's that notion of managing, helping each other to speak that same language through understanding the workflows, through understanding the key signals, and the attributes or the metrics that set those teams up for success. So that's been huge in terms of creating that alignment around where tech is at and where product is at, because typically, as you would appreciate, tech has historically been perceived as the black box. So that's the third segment. The fourth that we see is that tech leadership, that middle layer that I referred to in the first user profile of the VP or the CTO. And they might be running 3 or 4 teams concurrently. They're kind of across what's going on. They're not really sure. They're not in the detail, and they don't have time to get in the detail. The main reason they're using Umano is, number one, for reporting, to really get that automated end-to-end view of how each team is tracking. But with those reports and with that information, they're doing 2 things. Firstly, they're better managing the stakeholders that they have, their internal customers or their external customers, so that they're creating more stable, sustainable patterns. They're not, for example, constantly changing scope or kind of blowing in the wind, if you like, and reacting to all of the change that occurs in the way that those teams are trying to work. And they're using Umano to set expectations around a consistent, stable way of working that delivers the best, most predictable outcome. And conversely, what they're also doing with Umano, because of those things, means they're getting time back in their day. They can actually start or go back to the things that they love doing and that they're best at doing. They don't need to be paid to be doing reporting. Umano can do that for them end to end. So that's an example of the user profiles that are signing up, the problems they're trying to solve, and the unique application of Umano to solve those problems.
Okay, awesome.
Chris, talking about the raise, how much you're raising and what is going to be the use of funds like? I remember that you have 3 projects for this round. If you can tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, you bet. So the raise, excitingly, is to really take that next step for Umano in our growth. We want to leverage the learnings and the traction that we've had, and we want to codify that. We want to really solidify and get a system around that. And so there's 3 things to do that, to build those foundations for growth and to get us ready for the next round. So right now, the 3 projects, the first is clearly customer acquisition. And to do that, the strategies around digital marketing, building our funnel and getting an automated funnel to bring qualified leads into the product, and to start to explore and lock in these affiliate partnership models are going to be core strategies to achieve our very ambitious customer acquisition targets. And so the of the 500K, 150 to 180 of that capital will be allocated explicitly to the growth and the marketing side. I'm lucky enough to be already working with an awesome growth marketer. He had his own company prior to this, also in human behavior analytics, and I want to bring him on full time. So that's going to be amazing to do that. And then we'll obviously have spend available for the digital components as well. Second project is around expanding the number of customers we can serve. And so that taps into what I mentioned earlier about expanding beyond just serving customers using the Atlassian dev toolset to also include the Microsoft toolset. As you can imagine, that's a huge market for us to unlock. And so that's plugging in API integrations with Azure DevOps, with GitHub, GitLab, and then also some other tools that developers using around communication, like Notion and Trello, to expand the number of customers we can serve. Right now, we've got a list of at least 50 prospect customers that want to sign up, but can't sign up because we don't have the tools. So as soon as we're plugged in, we're kind of ready to start serving those customers. And so of the 500K, another 150 will be allocated to that second project. The third project that we're working on is really building the next tier of value in the product so that customers on our reporting product right now can then upgrade. And so what this does is unlock new revenue streams. And so we want to spend 200K on building this next layer product. And if you think about the journey we take a customer on, we move them in their evolution and transformation from awareness through the reporting tool to then into growth insights. And it's the growth insights that is driven by prediction models, recommendation engines, all of the insights that embed us into their workflow to say, hey, here's what you look like at your best. Here's where you currently are. And here's the recommendations or opportunities to get you there faster. And it's in that product where we bring in not just those ML and AI driven insights, but also the qualitative side of learning, of the learning loop. So bringing in notes, annotations, the ability for teams to self-assess on a weekly or monthly pulse survey of how they're tracking. And then we get to blend the qualitative data of a team with the quantitative data of the team to really start to correlate what drives great outcomes so that they can repeat it and learn and improve and learn. So they're the 3 projects: customer acquisition, expanding through more APIs in terms of the number of customers we can serve, and expanding the revenue generation pathways by creating the next level product in Umano.
Awesome. And in terms of the capital raise, what momentum have you had so far?
Yep. So of the 500, we've got 160 subscribed. We've got 4 subscription agreements currently out. We're currently in conversation, excitingly, with a couple of the larger solution providers to Atlassian, which is exciting because they're clearly in the sweet spot. And I think when I start to, really frame up who it is ideally that we want to bring on board, it's partners that are passionate about creating the future of work, because clearly that's in the space where we're shaping. It's partners that may have experience in that, like solution providers or app developers already in this space. And it's partners that can unlock markets for us in terms of being already in the markets, we're currently and starting to serve, but also we know ultimately we want to expand into. And so by helping to have some strong partners in new markets that we can tap to really leverage networks and even just market context and understanding of how to do things is critical for us to really level up and leverage a bigger network for our next stage of growth.
Awesome. So it's an exciting spot to be in. Sounds like you've got some really good momentum. I'm just conscious of time, so we'll leave it there. But what I want to say is that if this sounds like a really good opportunity for you, and I think it is, because I think the space that you're playing in is poised to explode, and there's a lot of funding that's being invested into this area, and it's very much a global play. And if you think about all the dev teams for all the large companies across the globe, it can be very, very profitable. So if you'd like to get in touch with Chris, please reach out to Leila and myself, and we'd be more than happy to make an introduction. But thanks for jumping on with us. It's been great to give us the walkthrough on what you're doing, and it's exciting. We're very excited, and we're glad to have you on board.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.